the grenades fly!
I've started reading Soten no Ken, and I just wanted to give my thoughts on it. I am on the first 20 chapters, and I can proudly say it's really boring. It's so boring. It's funny, I actually have a clip of me talking about Soten no Ken because I was going to make a tiny video before I started reading it. I'll probably play a little bit of it for you right now. I think it's going to be pretty good. I have a good feeling. I'm trusting you guys with that, right? It's most likely going to be better than HNK 2. I don't see any way it's not going to be better than HNK 2. Ken Kazumi is going to be a character. You know, I think I'm going to like him. As for something else, I do think the side characters are probably going to be better. From what I've heard, the Soten no Ken side characters sound like they're better written. But anyways, as you could hear in that recording, I had so much hope and joy, and I was like, wow, they had so much time to get their writing-ish together. I can't wait to see what good shit comes out of it. I haven't seen any of that yet. I'm not even gonna lie to anybody. There's a lot of problems I feel right now with the pacing. I've been told it's like reverse HNK, where the first half is kind of bad and the second half is really good, because that's when like Zonggu and all them get introduced. Because the start of this book is so boring. I was reading it in the Discord that you should join, by the way, it's going to be in the description. I can't wait for a villain to show up. There's like no main villain to focus on for like the first 10-20 chapters. There's one guy who shows up for like 3 chapters. He loses in like 2 seconds and surrenders. And then for the other 10, there's just nobody. Literally, real talk, there is a minor villain who looks like the most generic character ever. And his fight is like 5 chapters long. His fight is longer than the Jaggy fight. And that's a problem, because no one cares about generic boxer guy number 5. I wanted to die. I was sitting there like, there's no way we haven't killed this guy yet. And the only reason they didn't is because they were so busy talking about things that don't matter that the fight couldn't continue. They were like, is that really Kazumi? Or is that Yi? Oh my god, Goron is struggling. How could I bet my money? I'm like, I really don't care. I thought Kazumi was going to carry the book for me, and at the moment, he's not really acting too different from Ken. If anything, he's not doing anything interesting yet, and that's a problem when I'm meant to follow him. And unlike HNK 1, whereas I said in one of the videos, I was like, one of the best parts of the start of HNK 1 is seeing Ken's powers. When you're into Soten no Ken, you've probably finished HNK 1. So when Ken does something crazy, it's not as surprising anymore. So then you're just sitting there like, man, I can't wait for the plot to get good like the second half of HNK 1. I can't wait for that to happen. And I'm still waiting. It's really rough. They introduced some side characters and I'm like, that's neat. I can't say I have a reason to care about the side character that they've introduced as of right now with my boy Yi. And I think one of the other main problems is you have to think about, let's talk about HNK 1. HNK 1, from chapters 1 to 20, we had the entire Shin arc happen. Like Club, Spade, Heart, all of them, and the Shin fight. Within chapters 1 to 20 of Soten no Ken, they've just been talking. Okay, let me break down what I think they've done. We introduced a side character, we've established Kazumi, and we've established he's going against the Mafia. And that's kind of it. I feel like they've been trying to cram backstory down your throat that you don't really care about. I think my favorite moment so far was the fact that they showed Ryukin as a kid. That was pretty neat. It's crazy. I don't have too much to say about it. There's just so much nothing going on. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. At this point, it really feels like I'm reading a Gaiden. I can't remember if I said this in a video before, but a Gaiden's sweet spot length is 20 chapters. And the only reason I always say that is because it doesn't give them so much time to just put a bunch of padding filler in. So they have to make whatever story they want to make count in those 20 chapters. Soten no Ken's first 20 chapters, like I keep saying, there's nothing going on. And I'm really not interested in what they're talking about right now. So I feel like I'm in the big fluff filler part of Soten. And people keep telling me, oh yeah, it gets good after chapter 100. Chapter 100 is like the entirety of HNK 1. Do you know how many chapters 100 chapters is? I'm gonna be chipping away at it like slowly, but I really want to know what you guys think. When do you think Soten no Ken gets good? This was just meant to be a little quick video to give my little thoughts on Soten no Ken so far, because I'm probably gonna make what ifs about it in the future, maybe talk about the story. Probably not the first 100 chapters, but I actually got interested in the story, which is hard to believe after last time where I flamed it for for the first 20 chapters for like 5 minutes. But the story actually did pick up. It took until like chapter 40, but the story actually did pick up, and I'm happy to say that. And I guess I should go over, you know, how that ended up happening and what was going on in the story. So I feel like at the part I'm at now, they're introducing more faced characters. If you've read HNK, you know what I mean. If they introduce a slew of ugly characters, you know they're not gonna matter. They're just the filler people that get beat up. And that was a problem with the first half of SNK. It was a ton of ugly dudes you knew were not going to matter at all. Going from where I left off last time, they started focusing on Mang Yu. And I think Mang Yu was not a great villain at all. He wasn't really even a good character. He was written kind of dog shit. He was written like he was meant to be like Kaio Rao, because he had like Kaio's powers, but to a way weaker extent. And then he says Rao's lines. And he's meant to be like this evil complementary version of Ken, because instead of having super sniffing like Kazumi does for some reason, he has super hearing. And then this character that I felt like they were going to set up to be like a slightly longer term thing, they kill him in 2 fights. And in his first fight, he loses his arm. I was so shocked by that. It didn't make any sense to me that you're like, oh, here's the next rival. He's the other Hukdo guy. He's going to be a long-term problem. His arm's broke. Now he has a blade arm. And I barely remember their second fight. I know it happened. And I read the book like earlier today or yesterday. And I can't even remember their second fight. I just know a nameless guy showed up while they were fighting. Mang gets shot and then he dies. And I don't know. Mang was just an ugly mess of a character. I felt like they wanted to do too many things with him. They were like, we want him to be original, but we want him to be like Rao for the old fans, and this and that, and he doesn't fit into any of them. And his motivation sucked too, by the way. It was like, I hate Pan Yuling. She didn't love me. I'm racist. And I'm like, it was rough. I wanted him to carry the book for me, but when I started reading his parts, I was like, oh god, I wanted to get past it really bad. After that, we get a little bit more of Geis, who did show up in the first 20 chapters, but he didn't really talk. He said like 3 things. Charles the Geis, I think, is an interesting character, because I don't fully understand what he's after. I know he's a good guy, but whenever he's on screen, I'm interested to see what he's gonna say and what he's gonna do. I feel like he's more of an unpredictable good guy than everyone else they showed. And I was like, this is nice. And then he carried the book for a few chapters. Then they showed Pan Yuling, who has amnesia because Mang gave her amnesia. And I was shocked and appalled that they wrote a woman character in a Hokuto no Ken property, and she doesn't suck. She's out here like saving slave people, and I'm like, wow, they're writing a good woman character. I was in disbelief. I felt like they were trying to make up for how they wrote Mamaya in the first part of, you know, HNK 1. Because as I've said, and I think Tetsuhara's even said, he didn't like the way women were written in HNK 1 because they were kind of nothing. They barely did anything. And in SNK, the first introduction of a woman fighting character, she's out here saving people. And unlike Mamiya, she didn't lose, which is shocking and appalling. And there's no one walking up to her going like, you're a woman, shut up. Shut up, babe. I can't explain how shocked I was that they actually handled a woman warrior character well. I've been told she gets even better the further you go on, so I'm really excited to see that. What else was there? There was Geis' sister's death, which was handled really well. Like, I was actually shocked that it happened, and it's funny because his sister, I think her name was Sophie, she actually did not matter at all. Like, I could care less about her. She was talking about some bad stuff that happened to her, and I was like, oh, okay, this is just a character that exists. And I wasn't blown away with her character development or anything. That wasn't really the point. But when she died, I was like, yo. You could tell by the way it was framed she was going to die, but it still shocked me somehow. I don't know how to explain it. You'd have to read it. It was a great way to set up the next villain. It reminded me of Kira. That's the best way to explain it. It reminded me when Kira killed Shigechi. It was just so sudden. I was like, there's no way they just killed her in 2 seconds, because she just had this whole thing where she had amnesia and she got her memories back and then she remembered her brother, and I'm like, well, surely she's gonna like be around for at least a little bit. And then they immediately fucking blow her up on the next chapter. I didn't expect it. I wasn't torn up about it, but it was written well. Then we get to Taeyun, who is an actual villain. I'm kind of scared where he's going. Like I said, I ended on chapter 59. They didn't deal with him yet. Basically, he has mind control powers and he's decently strong. He makes me uncomfortable. I don't know how to explain it. When we were reading it in the Discord that you should join, by the way, I plugged it last time, I'll plug it this I ended up calling him Andrew Taeyun, just because like one of his lines when he's fighting Ken, he's like, "Oh, women are objects." I think he's a good villain. They're handling him like he's a bad guy, which is the problem a lot of Ray Gaiden villains have. They would just go like, "I'm gonna fuck a woman," and then like no one would care about it. They go like, "Well, that's mildly weird." Everyone treats Taeyun like he's this nasty, weirdo, creepy guy. They handled it well. That's the way you're meant to handle a foul character like that. So I'm kind of interested to see how this whole arc's gonna play out. He's fun to watch. He's not an ugly, generic bastard guy, and he actually has powers, so the fights he's in are interesting to watch. So he's handled well. What else is there? There's also the old Taoist. I'm very scared about that character. Just because I feel like he's the thing that's gonna move the plot forward. Like whenever there's like a plot hole or the writer doesn't know how to naturally move the story forward, he's just gonna show up and go like, hey Ken, how you doing? You're the only one who can see me. I'm like a ghost of the plot, and I think you should do this, and then he fucking disappears. I call it lazy writing. When you write a magical character who knows how the plot should go and tells them what they should do with like no normal indicator at all. But yeah, I'm a little weary of him. They introduced a big guy. He was kind of funny. I don't really have anything much to say about him yet. The only bad thing I have to say about him is Taeyun calls him, and then they send over a bunch of ugly random dudes to raid Shanghai, and I've been told that those ugly random generic villain dudes just show up throughout the entire book as something for Kazumi to just do. After the first 20 chapters of just fighting ugly generic people, I was kind of hoping we weren't gonna go back to that. I'm assuming it's gonna be on a lesser scale than that, but still, I could have lived without it. As for Kazumi himself, Kazumi got a little bit more interesting. He said a few things that normal Ken wouldn't say. Like when he's fighting Taeyun, he's like, "Oh, so you think with your dick?" And I was like, okay, I don't think normal Ken would have said something like that. That was kind of funny. They threw a few more jokes in there that just kind of worked for me, if that makes sense. Because the first half, I felt like all the jokes missed me. Like the first 20 chapters, all the jokes were ass. But now they're okay. I feel like it's just because we got rid of all the annoying people I didn't care to hear speak. So long story short, it feels like we got past a good chunk of the filler stuff that they wanted to just explain, and now we're on to the I could actually write a fun story, which is great, and I'm really interested to see on where it's going. I'm not gonna lie, I do understand the people who don't like Soen at all. That start is fucking horrendous. But I think, for me at least, around chapter 40, when they introduced, you know, Geis' sister, and they have Geis talk more, and then Pan, the dude in the wheelchair, when they have him start interacting more, all of those are interesting characters. I feel like all the interesting interactions are happening now. If I had to recommend anyone start Soten, start at like chapter 40 or 39, because it kind of skips all the BS you really don't care about. Like, sure, you might miss a couple of characters in like first introductions. There's so much filler in them, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, as for right now, I'm excited to see where this goes. I could read the chapter 100 now, honestly. I'm pretty interested. I'm sure the next time I read, I'm gonna read a bigger chunk of chapters than I did this time. But we'll see. Literally, everything that I was happy for last week immediately got ruined. It's insane how bad everything went, and I'm trying to think of where to start. Taeyun, his fight started getting dragged, which is funny, because the pacing last week from the chapters before was really good. It felt like we were moving forward and they weren't wasting too much time. With this chunk of chapters, right before they're about to fight Taeyun, they just talk about things again, and I'm like, oh no, I'm back at the first 20. And then Taeyun turns a dude gay. That happened. They also say the F word, and not the FU one, and that was pretty crazy. The Taeyun fight is one of the things I was the most excited for, because I'm like, this dude sucks, he's a proper villain. After all the bad things he's done, he's probably mind controlling women, because when they introduced him, he mind controlled someone, and I'm like, not a good start. He's known as the wife stealer. He blew up Geis' sister. I'm like, oh man, they're gonna give this guy what's coming to him. So when they finally beat him, they gave him a redemption, and they let him leave. This is probably the worst, most undeserved, most random character redemption I've ever read. I don't know how to explain it. The second they beat him, he's like, I've learned the error of my ways. And then Geis goes like, we can't kill him because he could be helpful. I'm like, Geis, he literally blew up your sister. Like, probably not even a week ago. And he told Yu Ling, Ken's girlfriend, he said, I'm gonna take her, I've dreamed of smashing her, and all of this, and Ken heard all this. And then we just spared him. It's not even just the redemption, which was awful. It's the fact that they give him a redemption, and then he just fucking leaves. He just disappears from the story. I haven't seen him again. After that fight ended, they were like, oh, you're good, and then he, like, despawns. I'm like, oh, God. They made a villain that I actually disliked because I thought he was smart and he was taking things differently. But anyway, let's talk about Panula. Last time, if you remember, I was like, wow, she's such an interesting character. I can't wait to see how they give her memories back, and it is the most painful shit I've ever read. It was so bad. It wasn't as bad as Rin getting her memories back. The thing with Pan's memory loss is when they're trying to give it back to her, they're like, oh, we can't say anything to remind her. Why? We don't want to fill the void in her heart. I'm like, what kind of fucking Kingdom Hearts dialogue is this? So they spend a good chunk of the next chapters trying to give her memory back without telling her things, and it's super weird to read. Like, she literally finds a picture of Ken and her together, and she's like, oh, we must have been close, and you would think this would be the optimal time to tell her that you two were married and you knew each other. And Ken goes like, no, I can't tell her. I'm gonna just say I don't know her. Even though she obviously knows that they know each other. He's like, no, I can't say that. At this point, just say it. And there wasn't a reason they couldn't tell her. There was a reason Ken couldn't pressure point her memories back. But there was not a reason he couldn't just say it. So you're sitting there for like 30 chapters waiting for her to get her memories back. And everyone's playing the tiptoe game, which has no reason to be played. Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad. The worst part is really the fact that the Taeyun thing happens, and then this happens. It was like 2 back-to-back L's in storytelling, and I hated it. And then after all of that, they focus on Taeyun's brother again, who is just a big dude, who is not interesting at all. And I have no interest in seeing him being the villain. So it's like a 3-piece fuck-up. Everyone keeps saying, it gets good when Zong shows up. I'm trying to hold faith. I really am. I'm not gonna drop the book because at this point we're invested. It's rough. It is so rough right now. The entire start of this book feels so painful. I can get why people don't like it. What was the joke I said in the first week? It takes 100 chapters to get good. That's really what it's feeling like. Like, I really did enjoy the early Taeyun parts, and then they ruined it. The things they had going, they ruined it entirely in the next set of chapters. It was incredible to see something nosedive so fast back into mediocrity. It was wild. I really don't know what else to say. There's a lot to talk about. So as you remember last time, I was like, wow, I sure hope they don't really focus on Taeyun's brother because he's not really that interesting. So they focused on Taeyun's brother, and as you can imagine, it's not really that interesting. Honestly, I read all these chapters about a week ago, if not like 3 or 4 days ago, and I don't remember much of Taeyun's brother's little arc thing. I remember there was an owl guy who wasn't funny. And then they have a few flashbacks of Taeyun's brother and Taeyun being raised, and you find out that the big guy was their master's birth son, and Taeyun was the adopted son, but he just happened to be better at stuff. That happened. I don't really have an emotion tied to that. The big guy gets a redemption arc because Taeyun shows up himself, who is absolutely ruined now. Taeyun doesn't have a personality anymore. After they beat him that first time, he has no personality at all. He doesn't crack a joke. He doesn't smile. He's just a fucking blank slate that does martial arts, and not even really. Because he wasn't even involved in the fight they had with the big guy. He showed up at the end and was like, brother, I have to execute you, but not really because you're a good guy and daddy loves you. So I'm just gonna snatch your memories away, and then I leave. Yeah, and he fucking disappears again, by the way. This dude just appears when he's needed. He's like the mysterious stranger in Fallout. He's like a random chance event. The whole thing where they were like, oh, the big guy was the birth son. I don't really care. I didn't really care about their master. I thought he was literally going to show up in the book, like, in current time and not in a flashback, and he doesn't. I guess the Taeyun backstory is nice. I can't say I really care about it. So with that out of the way, I guess I should go on. Feiyun's brother appears to set up the introduction of Feiyun. And Feiyun's brother, I think, got shafted really fucking hard. So he shows up, Kazumi's doing something, and he appears in front of Kazumi. They fight for a little bit. He does the Souther thing, the Souther bird thing. And then he's like, you're a pretty cool guy, Kazumi. And he leaves. And from that, I was thinking, wow, what a cool character. I'm shocked no one's talked about this guy. He looks like he's going to be a Souther-type mentor character. I can't wait to see what they do with him. Yeah, he gets fucking shot by an unrelated party. He doesn't get a cool fight or anything. He gets blasted opening up a fucking window. Because, you know, SNK doesn't know how to write characters, apparently. Feiyun has this kid he's watching over, which I'll explain more in a second. And they're talking, and they have the windows locked, the blinds covered or whatever. And the brother walks in and he's like, why do you guys have the windows closed? And Feiyun's like, oh, you know, me and the kid are just talking. And Feiyun's brother goes like, no, seriously. Opens up the window, opens up the blinds, turns his back from the window, and then gets blasted. Which is funny because he knows like discount Nanto, so I'm pretty sure if he just looked out the fucking window, he could have sliced the bullets in half. But you know, we just want to get rid of characters over here, so it does what it does. Then we gotta talk about Feiyun himself. He exists. I don't really feel any particular strong feelings about him. He's watching over a kid, and their whole dynamic is like, my parents are dead. Can you take care of me? Can you be my dad? And Feiyun's like, I feel bad for you, poor innocent little child. That's basically their whole dynamic. He's kind of like if Rey and Ayn fused together, and I don't know. I don't really care for Rey, and I don't really care for Ayn either. So I'm sure you can imagine why I don't feel too much about this character. He showed up, and he has to fight Ken for some reason that I can't even remember. Because when I explain these things to you, you guys don't understand how much like filler shit I'm skipping when I explain these big moments to you. Because there's so much talking that's still in the book. It's actually ridiculous. I'm starting to understand why HNK worked. Because in HNK, there wasn't really world politics going on. So you didn't have Shin going around and talking to Yuta like, yo, you heard what happened in the Souther Triad? And then they go back and then they introduce everyone's family in the Souther Triad. And then they introduce Souther, and then they introduce his mom and his dad and his pops. SNK does that all the time. So when I have to bring up what I remember from these arcs, a lot of reasons I forget some of the smaller things that happen is because it's surrounded by a bunch of shit that no one cares about. Anyway, back to Feiyun. I guess I should mention, he kills Geist in the most embarrassing way possible, I find. So, to break it down for you guys, you haven't really heard me mention Geist doing anything. You've heard me mention, oh yeah, Taeyeon killed his sister, like, you know, things were happening to him, but he wasn't actively doing anything. So, Feiyun finds Geist and fucking kills him immediately. If you guys expected me to say, oh, and then they fight, right? It wasn't even really a fight. Geist didn't even get to throw a punch from what I remember. Feiyun immediately slices his shit and he gets, like, dead. It's pretty rough. You would think for the first serious time they would have Geist fight, he would get to do something, but he doesn't. Feiyun immediately shits on him. Geist extends his life a little bit so he can tell Ken about Feiyun. And that's it. Geist doesn't actually get to seriously fight one time in the entire book. You see a little bit of flashes of it here and there from what I remember. Like, I think he bitched Mang for like 2 seconds. And he shot a random goon once. That's really all the fighting you get to see him do. Even though he apparently knows Hokuto, you never get to fucking see any of that because Feiyun immediately shits in his mouth. So... that was pretty cool. The one good thing about Geist's death is the way they drew out the scene was pretty good. I don't know what it is with SNK with characters being kind of dookie before they die, but their death scene is pretty good. Him dying on a boat, watching over the city and fireworks going off, and him seeing his dream and them comforting him, it was a nice moment. The drawings were pretty good too. I don't really know what else to say about that. And then Ken fights Feiyun, and the fight is kind of stupid. I'm not gonna lie. So the fight starts. Feiyun slices Ken's back and he's like, oh, you fucked me up. Oh. He gets on one knee, gets up because he's a Chad and he doesn't care that he just got his back sliced open. They continue fighting and Feiyun goes, ha! I have 1,000 arms. You can't do anything to me. Your arms are tied up with my arms so no one can swing at anyone. Ha ha ha! And then they do a fist rush and Feiyun gets hurt. He's like, Nani, what is this? And then Kazumi says the most dumb thing ever. He goes, well, in the middle of our fist rush, I did Tenha. So I actually have 1,001 arms because I have my finger. And if you look at the panels, he literally does not do Tenha in it, like at all. Maybe it's meant to be, he did it so fast you couldn't even see it, which is kind of a cop-out answer, low-key. The fact that he just threw in a Tenha and a beam rush that no one got to see. And it immediately ends the fight, by the way. I can't remember them fighting after that. If they did, maybe they flicked each other in the nose once and then the fight ended. But Kazumi does Tenha mid-rush. The fight ends. Feion almost kills himself for a reason that I can't remember. Kazumi stops him and then they're friends. And after that, Zong shows up. And I intentionally stopped where Zong showed up because when Zong shows up and Yasuka, who I haven't seen yet, shows up, that's when I'm told, this is when the story hits peak. You're gonna love it. This is when the entire story comes together. None of those chapters were wasted. This is the comeback arc. Zong doesn't show up until chapter 140. The fact that nothing in this book appealed to me in that entire stretch of time, I don't know if I could really call it a good book. The entire start of the book is bad. I can't imagine myself giving it anything more than maybe a 7 or a 6. I don't know how good the upcoming part is going to be. I really hope it knocks my socks off and blows me out the window. At this point, with how many nothing burger chapters have happened, with a few little interesting sprinkles in between, which they kind of usually ruin immediately after they put them on, I can't imagine giving it anything higher than a 7. Because if I make something and you have to get halfway through the book to get to the decent part, I don't know if I could call it a good book. You have to think the entirety of HNK 1 would have ended already at chapter 140. That's like HNK 2. That's about when they're about to fight Falco, I think is where 140 is in HNK. The fact that SNK takes this long is just, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know how to describe it. It's horrible. It's horrible pacing. And the fact that you couldn't really make anything super interesting until this point, which I don't even know if it's interesting yet or not. We're gonna have to find out. It's just a little weak to me. I really hope this turns around all my thoughts about SNK. I really want to eat my words and go, you know what? It was worth it. I really want that to happen. I don't see it happening from what they've shown me so far, but I really, really, really want that to happen. So, like I left off last time, I intentionally stopped at the Zong part because Zong is meant to be the holy savior that saves the entire book. And at the start, he's not really super interesting. I don't know if I could say the word, but he's undercover with the bad guys, and he doesn't really do too much interesting when he's around them. So after like 10 or so chapters of just filler talking, he runs into Kazumi at Geis's grave, and they fight for a bit. And I read this first half a while ago, so my memory may be failing me, but I remember Zong dogging Kazumi, and then when Kazumi's about to lose, he goes into MT for 2 seconds by accident and can't go back into it. I don't mean like he went into MT and stayed in MT. I mean, he went into MT to dodge a move because the writer was like, I don't know how to get out of this. Which was like the biggest ass pull for no reason. And after that moment, they fight like they're on equal ground, and I'm like, no, Zong was just dogging you 3 seconds ago, but it's whatever. The big fight that everyone kept trying to wind me up for to go like, yes, Zong versus Kazumi. It's like Ken versus Rao. Their first encounter was kind of dog shit, all things considered. Even Kentro and Rao's first encounter in like base HNK, I think was better than this. And like I said, I don't even really care for that encounter that much. Something about the fact of Kazumi just going into MT by accident for 2 seconds and then them pretending, yeah, they're equal. I'm like, no, you just pulled that out of your ass. After that, Zong proceeds to get ruined as a character for like the next 40 chapters. Because after that, they try to focus on Zong's little arc where he's chasing this guy that killed his parents. And that part is painfully uninteresting. Just because the guy that he's chasing doesn't have any martial arts, doesn't really mean anything in the grander scheme of the story, and no one else really cares about him. So they're just dealing with this guy, and you're like, I can't wait for this to be over, and we talk about the characters I care about. What else got introduced in there? Zong's girlfriend shows up. She's kind of information vessel. She kind of showed up to go like, I love Zong, but we gotta deal with him. That's kind of her entire personality. She really does not do anything at all, you know. You're telling me an HNK property is wasting characters? Unbelievable. In real talk, Zong hardly does anything in those times where he's chasing this scarred guy. Because there's so much time where they're not even fighting. Like, he's not even engaging this scarred, not Juke looking fella. They're just talking about, I think Zong's gonna be over here. Dang, that guy who killed my parents, like, he keeps getting away. Blah, 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 blah. Like, there's so much random talking, again, as I say in every SNK review part. It's ridiculous. Like, honestly, like I said, the dude doesn't have any powers. Zong could kill him in like 3 seconds if he like got his hands on him. But we have to keep distracting from the main point because I think they know, everyone knows that. But anyway, some point into this arc, not Juke calls Yasuka, which we aren't meant to know is Yasuka yet. and he lures Zong into a trap and he fucks him up. This leads to Kazumi and Fei-Yun taking care of Zong, and then they kind of become friends a little bit. They're at least allies for the moment. And this leads to one of the best moments in the book so far, where Kazumi explains this whole story where he meets a ghost wolf in a temple somewhere in the middle of the desert, and then at the end of it all, it explains Hokuto Shinken to him, and then it disappears. And it's funny because when I was reading it, well, two things about it actually. One, I know some people like that scene. It's too long. It could have been one chapter. They could have summarized it a little bit. I felt like they broke down a little too much when he was explaining it. After he explains the whole story, I remember sitting back and going like, well, I wouldn't believe him. He just said all this shit disappeared. And then Zong says the same thing, and I'm like, uh-oh, character. And then Zong and Kazumi start arguing, and Fei-Yun tries to break it up, and they're like, we're not friends. Who the fuck told you we're friends? And Fei-Yun's like, why are you yelling at me? That's probably the best character-driven moment in the book. Honest to God, it might be the only character-driven moment since, you know, this is SNK and no one just talks in this book. It's a great moment. I think this is the start of when I started to actually like Fei-Yun, because if you remember last time, I thought he was okay. Around this point is where I was accepting him as a good character. But back onto the point of me talking about characters not having any character development, because this is something I bring up in the lives in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, I recommend you join it. Kazumi doesn't really talk to Pan, because if you remember earlier, like I said in one of the earlier recaps, I love Pan. Pan seems super interesting. She was like a badass. She barely gets to do anything now. She doesn't have martial arts, so they can't bring her to fights, but you would think since Kazumi and her were like, you know, about to get married or were married, there would be some conversations between them. But the only time they ever talk is when something important is happening and they need to set up the next arc. They don't go, hey babe, are you okay? Yeah, you know, this Fei-Yun guy. Like a little bit of neat exposition explained that way. They don't get any screen time together. And before this moment where Fei-Yun is talking to Kazumi and Zong, he didn't get too much either. You see him when he just adjusts and they take him in. There isn't any real character defining moments other than him going like, I don't know how to be a priest. Anyways, back onto the main story, because after this is what made me sad. So like I just said, I started to like Fei-Yun. This was around the point where I got used to him as a character. So Yasuka, who we're not meant to know is Yasuka yet, again, sets this kid out and he's like, oh, I'm injured. Let the church take me in. And it's a trap for Fei-Yun. Fei-Yun gets poisoned by getting shot in the back, and then he gets captured, which set off every red flag for me because almost every HNK and SNK death is kinda written like this. But anyways, Fan wakes up in the secondary location and he runs into Yasuka and he's like, the Lord demanded that I kill you and my Lord will be the one to take you out because my Lord wanted me to do it and my Lord he will. He leaves for a little bit and Fei-Yun's by himself and there's this little scene where there's a bird that Erica helped and is trying to help him. And the one thing I have a problem with is they leave him tied up on this mast or cross. I can't honestly remember which one of the two it was. And Fei-Yun's just sitting there like, I guess I'm trapped. I'm like, does he know he knows Discount Nanto? There's no way that pressure point is still in effect. There's no way he can't just slice himself free. From what I remember, there was a good period where Yasuka wasn't even there. So I don't know why he didn't just free himself and run away. But anyways, long story short, Yasuka comes back, Fei-Yun frees himself and they begin fighting. And this is probably the best side character fight in all of SNK. Probably because it's an actual fight, unlike Geist where he just got immediately destroyed. They actually have a real struggle, and it was really nice to see. I was shocked it was in this book, to be honest. They were trading blows, having, you know, little witty comebacks at each other. It was really cool. And unlike the Geist fight, Fei-Yun actually does some damage to Yasuka. Yasuka ends up winning at the end. Fei-Yun got his really good strikes in. At the end of the fight, Kazumi makes it there because the bird ratted on Yasuka from what I remember. And long story short, Yasuka runs away because the army splits the two of them up. Kazumi picks up Fei-Yun and they're like, okay, Fei-Yun, we have to get you back. You have to see Erica one last time. And he says no. I don't want her last memories of me to be like this. And he has this really good death scene. And I don't mean like Geist, where it's specifically his death, because this is immediately after the fight I just said was good. This entire last section was really good for Fei-Yun. I'm mad that it's when they decided to kill him, they gave him his best moment, and probably one of the best moments in SNK and HNK, to be honest, if you want me to be real. He got one of the best ways to go out. He basically took what Koryasha had and then put it on an actual important character. He was really good. All of this entire section where it's Fei-Yun, he's carrying the book. Everyone else exists, but he's hard carrying the book. And somewhat related, let me talk about Yasuka. I don't think Yasuka is going to be that interesting. I know I haven't gotten to the part where they really deal with him yet, but his character just kind of seems like, the Lord told it and the Lord taketh and the Lord... I'm like, okay. He doesn't seem to have a personality other than that, and it's kind of... When your personality is based off of one thing, and it doesn't seem like there's anything you could base off of that one thing, it's like, it's too much. It's too much for me personally. I hope they expand on him a little bit more, but knowing SNK, I have a feeling that Fei-Yun is probably going to be the best character in the book. I'm not even going to say for right now, I'm just going to say in general. I don't know if Zong can come back. I know people say, the next arc is the best arc, and Zong's going to clap back way harder than you're expecting. I'm not expecting much from him. If he does clap back, I can't wait to be surprised, but if not, I could accept that Fei-Yun is probably just going to be the best character in general. I just wish he lived longer. It's actually a shame that they killed him so fast. And then after that, they deal with the Scarface guy, and that's kind of it. That's kind of where I ended for the night. Overall, from this set of chapters, is there anything really great worth talking about? Probably just Fei-Yun. Honestly, like the little funny moment, like I said earlier, where they have the little character development, and Kazumi and Zong are there. We're not friends, and Fei-Yun's like, what are you yelling at me for? That was cool, but the Fei-Yun death was amazing. The Fei-Yun final fight and death was really good. Fei-Yun is the MVP of these chapters. He's the only thing that made it interesting. When I started reading this set of chapters, I was sitting there, oh great, here's the part where Zong talks for 10 years about this guy I don't care about. And then Fei-Yun shows up, and then the story all of a sudden became pretty good. I don't think it peaked like the Tae-Yun section did for me. Maybe it's because I had higher hopes back then, I have no idea. But this was really good. This is probably like the second peak of SNK. I wish I wasn't buried under 8 million chapters, but this was really good. I really did like this section. I hope this is a sign for things to come. I doubt it is, but I really hope it is. But with that, I'm assuming the only thing left is the Zong fight, because there's only 60 chapters or so left in the book, so I can't wait to read that. Good or bad, at least it'll be over. It was an interesting chunk of chapters. First, Zong, who has this thing where he basically accepts himself and he becomes a monk, and that was neat. There was a lot of neat art in there. There isn't really too much I have to say about it. We learned a little bit more about this lady who's actually Kazumi's mom, and a little bit of backstory, like she's Zong's master's daughter, so then Kazumi and Zong have a little bit of relation right there. It was some cute little things. I don't have too much to say about it though. Not that I dislike them, it was just things that happen. Yasuka tries to attack Zong, which doesn't really go too well. Zong fends him off like almost immediately just by like showing his aura, and then Yasuka goes, okay, well, this is fucking dead, he's gonna kill me. When you and Kazumi fight, I'll fight the victor. So as you could tell, this is all building up to Kazumi and Zong's final fight. And they have this nice moment where they just talk, and in that moment where they talk, it kind of helped me notice that these two don't really have a real reason to hate each other. I mean, yeah, Zong's like, oh, I hate Hokuto Shinken, this man is my rival, but there's no real deep reason for Kazumi to hate Zong or the other way around. It's not like Rao and HNK where Rao is practically killing the entire cast because he wanted to conquer the entire wasteland. Zong doesn't have that kind of super insane ambition. And I know some people bring up that he's a nihilist, but that really hasn't been mentioned except for like the first time he showed up. Because after that, he's just been talking about dealing with Yasuka and dealing with the scarred guy. He hasn't really had any of those moments where he's like, I want the world to burn. It's not that common for him. So even that's weak. And Kazumi's just fighting him because he's another strong dude, so that's what they do. As for the fight itself, it's pretty, but like I said, I don't really think they have a reason to fight, so it's kind of weightless. Like, this isn't the Ken versus Rao fight, like I said. This isn't like Rao's killed a ton of people like Rei, all the Nanto chariots indirectly kind of caused some of the Shin shit to happen. It's not like that. Zong hasn't really caused anything. He's just there as a threat. So when the whole book winds up to this fight, it's cool, but it lacks a lot of weight because it doesn't really feel super necessary. Like, what changes after Zong dies? Like, they're still in World War II times, there's still problems. They just dealt with Zong. But anyways, yeah, like I was saying, the fight was really pretty. I do like the fact that all the side characters show up. They're all pretty much speedwagging. Like, they're not adding anything real to the conversation. They're just like, he punched! Whoa! He broke a brick! Oh! With Zongwoo's girlfriend and Kazumi's mom being like the worst offenders. But later in the fight, you see Yasuka watching, and then Taeyeon shows up, who I completely forgot was a character. And Taeyeon basically says, you can't get involved in any of this or else I'll stop you. And it was really cool. Taeyeon in this chapter was actually pretty neat, and the only reason that makes me mad is because, well, A, he's an entirely separate character from how he used to be, and B, I wish he earned this, you know? Because like I said in the part when Taeyeon got redeemed, he didn't feel like he deserved a redemption. He was kind of an asshole. It doesn't feel like he reached this natural zen place where he's a martial art master. It didn't feel gradual. It just kind of happened. Like, he just lost the fight and then he goes, oh man, I fucked up, my bad. And then he becomes this calm, cool, and collected martial arts master. He didn't earn that. He just kind of ended up that way randomly because the writer was like, okay, I can't just have him be a creep this entire time, so here he is. And he hasn't showed up, like, till now. The last time I mentioned him in a recap is the last time he showed up. So I was really surprised when on chapter like 220, he shows up again. The way they show him now, it would have been really interesting to have him stick around Kazumi and the gang just to see what he would be doing. But we didn't get that. He just shows up right at the end of the book where there's only like, what, 40 or so chapters left. It's such a disappointment. I'm really sad that they handled him that way. Also, Taeyeon tells Yasuka to stand back or else he'll deal with him. This is the same Yasuka that dealt with Feion. And unless they expect me to believe that Taeyeon is somehow stronger than Feion, that threat doesn't really mean anything. I know that Feion was injured, but even then, like, Feion seemed like way more of a threat. I don't think Taeyeon would have bullied Geis the way Feion did. Overall, I'm kind of excited to see how this fight ends, but like I said earlier a few times, it lacks weight, so I don't think this is gonna like knock my socks off or anything. The dialogue did get slightly better around this point because there's not as much to distract the plot. Overall, SNK right now is okay. It's not bad, it's not over dialoguing everything like it was before, but it's kind of reached this middle point of it's alright right now. It's just a shame that it took 220 chapters to get to a point where I'm like, oh, it's okay.
Why has he forsaken us?
Finally reached the end of SNK. And honestly, I don't really know what to say. As I'm sure anyone who's read the final chapters of SNK can tell you, it gets really weird. What in the... It's almost like they didn't really know what to do, so they did everything. Starting with Soryu Tenha, I knew Soryu because I did the what if battles before where it was like the JoJo verse and all that. So I knew what it did, but I didn't know what the fight looked like. And the fight was underwhelming. Because at first when I was reading it, I thought, oh, he went into Soryu and they just immediately won. Normal Kazumi activity, and then they reset. And then Zong immediately kills Kazumi, and then they reset. And I'm sitting here, what the fuck is going on? And basically, they just killed each other in their brains aggressively until Kazumi punches Zong, and then the fight immediately ends. I don't even know how to explain it. Because the pre-fight before they went into Soryu was okay. I didn't think it was great like I mentioned last time. I thought it was weightless, but it looked nice. And then they go into Soryu and like, nothing really happened. Because it's them just looking at each other, envisioning each other dying. Kazumi punches Zong once and then the fight ends. Like immediately. When Kazumi goes to kill Zong, the Holy Spirit intervenes. The Holy Hukto Spirit. And I'm like, okay, this is when the story gets weird. And the old Taoist shows up in there too. I don't even remember what he did, but I was like, okay. The writer doesn't even know what the fuck is going on. He doesn't know what to write anymore. So after literal divine intervention saving Zong for no reason, the entire group bands together and they basically have the happy anime moment like, yeah! And we all came out on top and we're all better. Hooah! And I don't know how to, I'm happy the book ended, but I really didn't have too much to say about that entire section. Like, the half of the book is winding up to the Zong fight, and it ends in like 3 hits. Like, not counting the first half of the fight, the second it gets serious, and he does Soryu, the fight just ends, which is really disappointing. Also, we didn't get to see like any of Zong's real techniques, because Soryu deletes all your special abilities or whatever. So whatever Zong was learning, or could do, except for his big spirit stand thing, we don't get to see any of it, because we just immediately went, let's just fuck up the entire story and give Kazumi a new ability randomly. Yeah, he just has Soryu out. It just kind of happened. This could be out of order, so don't hate me. I might have meant to bring it up last time, but he touches the HNK2 stone. You know, that's neat. I don't have much to say about it. The thing about SNK is, at this end point of the story, which I'm going to get into in a second, they try to wrap up a lot of loose ends on plot things. The thing is, it's a lot of Hokuto backstory. If you do not care about Hokuto backstory, which I personally don't, it's really boring. I have nothing against people who were like, I want to learn the origins of Hokuto. That's fine. It doesn't have any real reason to be explained in this story, especially at the point where they beat Zong, and there's no reason to care about anything else because there's no real villain after that. It felt like a big waste of time when they went into all this detail, like, oh yeah, you know, this is why this happened, this is why this happened, and like I'm about to get to with Yasuka. Yasuka's the whole ending half of the book felt unnecessary. Because look, they beat Zong, which we all expected to just be the end part of the book. But then I guess they remembered, oh yeah, we wrote Yasuka in, and we didn't deal with him, so I guess we have to deal with him. And the thing is, Yasuka can't even fight Zong, so you know if he tried to fight Kazumi, Kazumi would just dog him immediately. When Yasuka goes after Kazumi, he dogs him immediately, but it's not normal, right? Kazumi doesn't just punch Yasuka. He doesn't just knock him out or something. Kazumi opens his shirt and a fucking stand hand pops out of his chest and choke slams Yasuka into listening to Kazumi talk. And then we get the entire backstory of Yasuka's martial art. And like I was just saying, it's interesting if you care about backstory origins that do not affect this story, but otherwise, it's an entirely unnecessary set of like 20 to 30 chapters. It felt so unnecessary. I know there's Regenesis where they try to expand on Yasuka's character. They could have just left this for Regenesis, honestly, because it has no purpose in this story. They could have just ended after the Zong fight and everyone's like, yeah, we're all friends now. The fact that they felt the need to put in 20 chapters of people just going like, here's the backstory, for a character that doesn't matter because we know he could get killed by anyone who wanted to kill him at this point. It just felt so unnecessary. The backstory itself was fine, I guess. It was a bit long. As a whole, wasn't needed. And Yasuka as a character feels like such a flop. It felt like they wanted to introduce another character and then they were like, fuck, we have to deal with Zong. So then he just gets his redemption and all his plot stuff shoved at the end of the book because they knew people were gonna ask what would happen to Yasuka. Did they just make a character to forget him? It was embarrassing. I don't really feel anything for the end of this book. I don't even think I'm really mad about it. I'm happy the book is over, but I'm like, the entire end just felt like someone was just doodling. The second I saw the old Taoist, I was like, we're in trouble. The second I saw Kazumi open his shirt and his spirit arm came out, and he didn't act like I was a super crazy event, I was like, okay, this is weird. The spirit wolf came back for a little bit. Yasuka talks to the ghost of the ancestor or something, and I was like, this is ridiculous. This is fucking wild. This sounds like JoJo out of context. It just felt like the entire end of the book was a flop for me. It ended on a pretty flat note. Like I said last time, it wasn't even necessarily horrible. It was just so middle of the road. I don't really feel anything. I didn't like all the spiritual aspects to it because they just weren't in like HNK, so it feels kind of weird to just go like, the Holy Ghost tells you to do this. But I'll give a full review of SNK pretty soon. I already have it written out. What a flat ending. What a flat ending. But I guess that's really all I had to say. So I'll see you guys in the full review. And with that, I've been M, and I am out.